Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the countdown to a possible government shutdown. Congress has until just after midnight tomorrow night to pass a short-term funding bill to keep the government open. Today, President Trump meets with congressional leaders from both parties after canceling a meeting last week with Democrats at the last minute. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says a stopgap has to include an extension of health care subsidies.
Our health care situation is a shambles, in good part because of what the Republicans did in the BBB, their so-called big, beautiful bill. Now they want to change the name of it because they know it's not very popular. I think 68% of Americans don't like it.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he hopes there's a serious negotiation. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats to pass a stopgap in the Senate. Majority Leader John Thune says the ball is in Democrats' court.
There is a bill sitting at the desk in the Senate right now. We could pick it up today and pass it, that has been passed by the House, that will be signed into law by the president to keep the government open.
Senate leaders John Thune and Chuck Schumer both appeared on NBC's Meet the Press, heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. Today's meeting is set for 3 p.m. Wall Street time from the White House. Government funding is set to lapse at a minute after midnight tomorrow night.
Nathan, the president will be holding another key meeting at the White House today. He'll be talking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The meeting comes days after Netanyahu used a UN address to reject international demands for an end to the war in Gaza. Vice President J.D. Vance is expressing optimism a deal can be reached.
So there's a very complicated negotiation happening right now between Arab leaders, between the Israelis, and of course between the Trump administration led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So those conversations are happening as we speak. They're ongoing over the course of the past couple of days. I'm going to let those negotiations play out, but I think the president's optimism is warranted here. I feel more optimistic about where we are right now than where we have been at any point in the last few months.
Vice President J.D. Vance made the comments on Fox News Sunday, and you can catch the program Sunday afternoons right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, there are major developments this morning in the race for New York City mayor, and Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us in Manhattan with the very latest. John.
And Nathan, there's one less candidate. Mayor Eric Adams has dropped out.
I cannot continue my re-election campaign.
He gave his reasons in a social media post sitting on the interior steps of Gracie Mansion.
The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
His announcement follows reports he was entertaining potential job offers from the Trump administration. Adams' exit means that former Governor Andrew Cuomo can mount a more potent challenge to the frontrunner, the Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani. A Suffolk University CityView poll released just Tuesday showed Mamdani leading with 45% support compared to 25% for Cuomo. The poll also had Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa at 9% and Adams at only 8%. But the polls have also shown that in a two-way race with Adams and Sliwa out, Mamdani's lead over Cuomo shrinks considerably. Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, endorsed Cuomo in the primary and has contributed to a PAC supporting his candidacy. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, John, thank you. A unique weather system could impact the East Coast in the coming days. Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen is tracking the storm.
Category 4, very strong Hurricane Umberto, a few hundred miles north of the Leeward Islands, will curve on up the Atlantic, bypassing Bermuda, although there will be some very strong wave action for the island. But the worst of the wind and the rain will stay far away, and it looks like Umberto will take a track across the ocean. In the meantime, just in front of Umberto is Tropical Storm Imelda, which would have gone right into the southeast U.S. coast with wind and rain. But it looks like Umberto is going to pivot around and pull Imelda away from the U.S. mainland. There may be more direct impacts to Bermuda later this week, but it looks like for the most part, Imelda will stay away from any landfall.
All right. Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen tracking the storm for us this morning. We want to turn now to the markets where gold is trading at another record high. Right now, COMEX gold is at $3,848 an ounce. And U.S. stock futures are also higher. Goldman Sachs strategists have upgraded equities to overweight from neutral. They cite limited correction risks in the near term on the back of optimistic growth expectations driven by AI and an expectation for further Federal Reserve rate cuts. The big economic report of the week will come on Friday with the jobs report for the month of September.
And we do have a deal to kick off the week, Karen. Denmark's Genmab has agreed to acquire Dutch drug maker Merus for about $8 billion. Merus is developing a treatment for cancer of the head and neck. It is traded on the NASDAQ. This morning it is up 38%.
Well, Nathan, AstraZeneca plans to list shares on the New York Stock Exchange to attract more investors, but it's keeping its London trading and UK headquarters. The shares will replace Astra's existing American depository receipts in the U.S. Astra is increasingly looking to the U.S. for growth as it seeks to boost manufacturing in the country. Astra has pledged to invest $50 billion in the U.S. over the next 5 years amid pressure from President Trump's tariff plans.
And Karen, auto parts supplier First Brands Group Holdings is filing for Chapter 11 in Texas. The privately held company's brands range from Anco and Trico wiper blades to Fram filters.
Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. A Marine veteran smashed a pickup into a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Michigan, opened fire, and then set the building ablaze during a crowded Sunday service. He was then fatally shot by police. At least 4 people were killed and 8 wounded, and authorities were searching the building ruins for more victims. It happened in Grand Blanc Township, a community outside of Flint. Law enforcement officials said the man got out of his pickup and started shooting, apparently using gas to start the fire. Grand Blanc Township Police Department Chief William Rennie says he's confident the community will come together and help each other heal.
I'm confident that we're going to overcome this, as Grand Blanc always overcomes these type of incidents.
Acting FBI agent in charge Reuben Coleman says they are investigating the attack as a targeted act of violence.
This act of violence has no place in our state or anywhere else in our country.
The FBI's Reuben Coleman says the attacker was identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford. The man charged with the murder of political activist Charlie Kirk is expected in a courtroom in Utah. Utah County has hired 3 lawyers to represent Tyler Robinson after a judge found he doesn't have the money to hire one on his own. Oregon has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration after the president said he'll send troops to Portland. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth sent a memo to the governor authorizing the deployment of 200 members of the Oregon National Guard for 60 days. Like a similar lawsuit filed earlier this year by California, Oregon's suit argues the president is overstepping his authority. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield.
It's actually un-American, if you think about it, to use the military against our own citizens. But that's exactly what's happening right now across our country, from California to D.C. to Memphis to Illinois and now to Portland.
Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
Thanks, Michael. Time now for our Bloomberg Sports Update, and for that, we bring in John Stashower.
Thanks, Karen. The Ryder Cup had Europe taking a big lead in the final day. The U.S. made a run in singles play, but Europe held on to win. 15-13, they've won 9 of the last 12 Ryder Cups. The baseball regular season is over. The playoffs begin tomorrow with Detroit at Cleveland. Red Sox visit the Yankees at San Diego at the Cubs, and Cincinnati at the Dodgers. Sunday Night Football in Dallas, a wild one between the Packers and Cowboys. The game ended in a 40-40 tie. There were 7 lead changes. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update.
Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak coming up after this.
coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager, and with less than 48 hours until a potential government shutdown, President Trump meets with leaders from both parties this afternoon at the White House on a stopgap spending bill. The president has predicted a shutdown will happen if Democrats don't drop their health care demands. Vice President J.D. Vance agrees.
We don't want to shut down the government, but if Democrats refuse to just pass this clean continuing resolution, that's exactly what's going to happen. And I think the Democrats are going to bear the responsibility for it.
That was Vice President J.D. Vance on Fox News Sunday, heard on Bloomberg Radio. This Monday morning, we're joined by Bloomberg's Jill Desis. And of course, Jill, it was just a few days ago that President Trump canceled a meeting with Democrats on Truth Social, saying it would be pointless to meet with them unless they dropped the health care demands. So why hold this meeting today? Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Nathan. Certainly, I think, we're really coming down to the wire once again with these two sides really trying to get the stopgap spending bill over the line. It does seem like at this point, the Democrats are still holding pretty firm to their healthcare demands. So the idea that this bill must include an extension of healthcare subsidies, a restoration of budget cuts to healthcare. Of course, Republicans saying that any of these negotiations could happen after they avert the shutdown. But I suppose that if you're a Democrat, at this point, what kind of guarantee would you ultimately have that Republicans would want to pick that back up when they continue to negotiate something that is a little bit more longer term? So this does seem to be a sticking point going into today, and I'm not sure that we're going to get much clarity until we do get these top four congressional leaders. Of course, that includes the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and his House counterpart Hakeem Jeffries, into this room with the top Republicans as well as Donald Trump.
It's not just the healthcare demands from the Democrats. We had that warning from the White House Budget Office last week that if there were to be a shutdown, government agencies should prepare for mass firings. Is that the kind of thing that could potentially buckle Democrats in their unity?
Well, so at this point, what we've actually heard from the Democrats, I think most notably Chuck Schumer, is that he's really kind of dismissed this threat of these mass firings. One thing that Chuck Schumer is trying to articulate as he's trying to call the government's bluff here is saying that, a portion of the mass layoffs that happened earlier this year when Trump came into office were ultimately restored by the courts, or in some cases, the administration itself has backed off. So at least from the Democratic perspective, it does seem like they're trying to play these negotiations as saying, we don't really think that you're going to go that far anyway. Of course, whether that's actually true, I think is, something that's still an open question.
How willing do Republicans seem to be when it comes to negotiating on the health care provisions that Democrats want, in the possibility that there could be a stopgap passed and potentially having those discussions, in the weeks to come?
Well, Nathan, I think, as we were just, talking a little bit earlier about J.D. Vance, you certainly don't see that willingness from the Republican side to go forward with something like this. The question, though, is whether or not they would actually feel that pressure from the Democrats. They do need to get on board. I believe that in order to get this short-term spending bill over the hump in the Senate, they need at least 7 Democrats to back it. So they do need to get at least some of those Democrats, potentially maybe that have better luck with those that are based in swing states or some such to actually get this through. But they still, again, do need at least some Democratic support in order to make something happen. So I think that there's at least, some motivation there to go through these negotiations this morning. Again, wherever that lands, I think is still a pretty open question, but you do see why you actually are bringing all of these sides together today to discuss something before, the government shuts down.
And in just 30 seconds, what kind of economic impact could we looking at here if there is a shutdown?
I think that, as with, this kind of threat when it rears its head, remember, first of all, it's been a good 7 or so years since we last had a government shutdown, but you're looking at a, pretty wholesale closure of a lot of what are deemed non-essential federal offices. And so that could amount to a significant amount of lost economic output. I will say that the Trump administration has pledged that it would continue to do some things such as collect tariff revenue in the event of a government shutdown, but still a pretty severe economic scenario here if they don't get something together.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it, in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.